In episode 61, titled Encrypt Endpoints, Whitelist Applications, and Enforce Policy, we treat laptops, workstations, and mobile devices as high-value targets that demand three visible anchors: encryption that survives loss, allowlisting that refuses unknown code, and policy enforcement that you can prove on any Tuesday. Endpoints travel. They cache credentials, and they hold fragments of sensitive data that do not always make it into server logs, which means the quietest breach can begin in a backpack. Our aim is layered calm: disks that are unreadable at rest, execution paths that admit only approved software, and configuration controls that do not drift when people move, roles change, or networks fail. We will connect each anchor to specific artifacts, keys, manifests, approvals, and reports, so your program is understandable to users, persuasive to auditors, and decisive during incidents. Begin with full disk encryption as the non-negotiable shield for everything that sits on the device. Full disk encryption, FDE, paired with secure boot ensures that data remains unreadable if the device is lost, and that the operating system that asks for your password is the one you installed. Use hardware roots of trust, such as a Trusted Platform Module, TPM, or Secure Enclave, and escrow recovery keys in a managed vault tied to device identity, not to individual employees. Run periodic witnessed recovery drills that prove you can unlock a drive when the motherboard is replaced or the owner is unavailable. Record the date, the device, the key identifier, and the outcome. Healthy FDE programs publish a simple statement for users: what is encrypted, what happens if they forget a password, and who can recover, and then back that statement with measurable coverage across the fleet. Application allowlisting converts a fuzzy concept, trusted software, into a gate that machines can enforce. Define trust in three layers: publisher signatures you recognize, cryptographic hashes of specific releases, and paths that are controlled by the operating system and your deployment tools. The default stance is deny. Unknown executables do not run until someone with the right role adds them to the manifest, with a recorded reason that ties to work. To keep engineers productive, pair allowlisting with fast approvals and visible status so legitimate tools do not languish in limbo. The logs should show every decision: which binary attempted to start, which rule denied or allowed it, who created the exception, and when it expires. When you can narrate those answers without logging into the device, allowlisting has matured from a penalty box into a predictable safety system. Exceptions are necessary, but they must be scarce, time-bounded, and owned, or they quietly become default policy. Build a lightweight workflow that asks three things in plain language: what job requires this exception, what risk does it create, and how long is it truly needed? Set automatic expirations tied to calendar time or usage counts, and notify owners before the clock runs out so renewals are conscious choices. Keep a public list visible to the relevant teams of active exceptions with owners, reasons, and end dates, and add a daily digest to reduce surprises. After expiry, remove entitlements automatically and record the diff so you can prove the rollback occurred. This rhythm keeps your allowlists tight without trapping legitimate work, and it creates an easy place to start when auditors or incident responders ask, "What here is unusual on purpose?" Script control bridges the gap between binaries and the interpreted environments that attackers love to borrow. Constrain PowerShell, AppleScript, Python, and other interpreters to approved business cases with signed scripts, constrained language modes, and module allowlists. Require elevation or a just-in-time approval when a script attempts sensitive actions such as writing to startup locations, changing security policy, or reaching management interfaces. Make logging unavoidable. Capture command lines, module loads, and transcript trails that are easy to search. Treat blocked script launches as friendly coaching moments. The system explains why the attempt was denied and points at the approval path, so users do not search the internet for ways around the guardrails. Over time, these constraints remove the easy button for payloads that hide inside everyday tools. Configuration profiles are how you freeze the important knobs in the right place and keep them there across fleets. Profiles should lock security settings, firewall states, and telemetry visibility, and they should travel with the device regardless of which network it joins. Tie profiles to roles and platforms, workstation, server, kiosk, mobile, so the same concepts are expressed in the right dialect for Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS, or Android.
Use a policy enforcement engine that reports drift as a first-class signal, not a quarterly surprise. And keep profiles in version control with peer review and change history. When someone asks whether hosts have disk encryption on, firewalls enabled, and logging visible, you should be able to show both the desired state and the rollout status per cohort, not just a slide that promises intent. Identity and posture make policy portable because they describe who is acting and whether their device deserves trust today. Bind enforcement to directory groups and device health signals so that the same person carries the same entitlements between networks, and the same machine either meets requirements or asks for remediation. Posture checks should verify encryption status, allow list agent presence, and recent patch levels before granting production access. When posture fails, the device lands in a safe lane with access only to update services and help resources. This approach keeps conversations consistent. Your rights follow you, and your device's privileges reflect its current condition, not the day it shipped. The artifacts to retain are clear: identity tokens used, posture attributes observed, access granted or denied, and the timestamp that ties them together. Evidence is what turns controls into confidence. For every policy, keep the version identifier, the date it shipped, the devices it landed on, and the exceptions it created. Compliance reports should map directly to your anchors. Percentage of the fleet with full disk encryption enabled, percentage with allowlist enforcement active, percentage in compliance with script restrictions and firewall profiles. Investigators need per-host timelines, policy applied, deviation detected, remediation attempted and completed, while auditors want summaries tied to recorded approvals. Store these artifacts where both security and operations can find them, and teach people how to read them, so an urgent question becomes a 5-minute lookup rather than a 60-minute meeting. Evidence builds the habit of speaking in receipts, not adjectives. Monitoring closes the loop by turning violations and successes into routed work. Alert on blocked executions that cross a risk threshold, on encryption status changes that imply a device is out of compliance, and on policy drifts that remain unresolved beyond a short window. Route those alerts to the owners who can act endpoint team for agent drift, desktop support for escrow issues, application owners when a release is not yet allowlisted, and attach the next steps in the alert itself. Suppress noisy, harmless blocks and elevate first-time events that imply new tools or new risks. Keep small dashboards, top denied binaries by business unit, devices that failed escrow verification, exceptions expiring this week. Monitoring is not a siren, it is a steady metronome that directs attention where it buys down risk the fastest. Common pitfalls appear in every program, and the fixes are methodical. Broad allow list entries added under pressure linger for months. Collapse them into specific publishers, hashes, or paths with a real end date. Stale policies drift from today's platform reality. Schedule quarterly reviews that merge redundant profiles, retire dead settings, and modernize ciphers and modes. Unmanaged local administrator rights appear on images and never fully leave. Replace them with just-in-time elevation tied to identity and log every privilege grant with a ticket number. Each fix is small and observable. One diff, one owner, one metric that moves in the right direction. Over a few sprints, the edge cases shrink and your controls feel precise rather than punitive. A scenario makes the anchors concrete. A user opens a booby-trapped document that tries to launch an unsigned executable into a user-writable directory, then enumerate files and call a command and control domain. Application allow listing denies the launch instantly, recording the path, hash, and rule name. The host firewall keeps outbound egress limited to sanctioned proxies, so no handshake succeeds. Even if the user had already saved data that the attacker later steals physically, full disk encryption means a lost laptop yields only unreadable sectors without keys. Script control logs a blocked attempt to invoke PowerShell with encoded arguments, and monitoring routes a concise alert to the endpoint team with everything needed to reproduce the decision. The result is uneventful: one noisy try, 3 visible controls, 0 encrypted files, and a short note to the user explaining what the system prevented and how to request legitimate tools. Linking encryption, allow listing, and policy enforcement to outcomes is the habit that keeps investment steady. Measure median time to policy, which shows how quickly a new baseline reaches most devices. Measure blocked execution trends per team, which surface where legitimate tools need pre-approval. Measure encryption coverage and escrow verification rates, which reveal whether recoveries will succeed when hardware fails. Tie those metrics to a few business statements. Lost devices did not become disclosures. Blocked malware did not become downtime. Staff onboarded without waiting for approvals. And publish the before and after each quarter. The goal is not a trophy slide. It is a rhythm where security posture and productivity improve together, and the receipts look the same to engineers and auditors. We conclude with a short fleet check that turns intent into visible change. First, verify encryption coverage with a current report and perform at least one witnessed recovery test on each major platform, capturing the key identifiers and timestamps. Second, tighten allow lists by replacing one wildcard or broad publisher rule with explicit hashes or signed packages for the 3 most used tools that triggered denials last month, and set expirations for any emergency entries still hanging on. Third, document open exceptions with owners and end dates, publish the list to the teams that rely on them, and remove at least one that no longer serves a live need. When these 3 moves are done, your endpoints will not just be hardened in theory, they will be encrypted, curated, and enforced in ways you can show without opening a single laptop lid.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.